This is the NDB approach that nobody asked for, but we're going to do things differently, so don't scroll away yet. We're going to use our GPS's bearing function as our sole means of navigating. Now, this is by no means a legal substitute for your ADF or for loading the approach into the GPS the right way, but it will help us visualize how bearing works and how we can not only think about approaches like this, but IFR navigation in general. This is the NDB approach to Friday Harbor in Washington. We're following a VOR radial to the island intersection where a feeder route will take us into the Friday Harbor NDB station, which is located on the airfield. The feeder route runs along the 273 bearing into the NDB station. Let's play with the bearing function on the GPS to see how that works. The simplest way on the 430-530 is to twist the outer knob a few times to the right to the nearest menu, then the inner knob a few clicks to the NDB screen. Our nearest NDBs come up and we see Friday Harbor, Foxtrot Hotel Romeo as the second one. The current bearing is about 265. From our position, we'd have to fly that course, roughly westbound, to get to the station. What's going to happen to our bearing as we continue south towards the island fix? The course we'd need to fly will move from westward more towards northwestward and the bearing will increase. Our southerly course of about 170 degrees is less than the current bearing. That's going to push the bearing up higher. If you've heard the expression push the head, pull the tail from ADF work, this is the same concept. Our heading, being lower, is pushing the bearing, being higher, away from it. When the bearing approaches 273, we want to make our turn to that course to go inbound to the station. Now, there are fairly strong winds out of the northeast. In order to maintain a 273 track, we're going to want to correct into the wind a bit, so we'll fly 10 degrees right of 273. Rolling out on that heading, we want to have a look at another data point, our current track. This is down on the 430. It shows that we're on a track or course of 273, even though our heading is about 285, showing the effect of a crosswind from the northeast. It's that track on the GPS that we want to get to 273. But we also want our bearing to be 273. Right now it's too high. How do we use the push the head concept to correct? We need to push that bearing back down to 273, so we need our track to be above it. We'll turn right to make our track about 285. By the way, I want to stress again that nothing we're doing here should be thought of as official IFR flying technique. You should never reference the GPI as your primary instrument for making turns. I just want to illustrate the relationship between track and bearing in a way that makes sense. Anyway, our track being higher than our bearing will push the bearing back down towards 273. Once it gets there, we could turn left again, and what we're looking for is to have our track equal 273. If the bearing is 273, we know we're on the feeder route. If the track is 273, we know we've got the correct wind correction needed to stay on the route. As we fly inbound, we make adjustments as needed. Eventually, the Friday Harbor NDB will jump to the top of the nearest list. As we approach the station, we're going to fly outbound the 159 course. Here's where things get tricky. We'll be flying outbound, but the bearing will always point inbound to the station. We'll be looking for our bearing to be 339 degrees, even though we're flying the reciprocal 159 degrees. We're still pushing the head. Unlike on an ADF where we use the tail to fly outbound, the bearing is still acting like a head pointing us towards the station. So as we roll out on our track, about 150 degrees, it's going to be pushing that bearing from just above north, down through north, and towards where we want it to go, 339 degrees. Once there, we want to hold it there by flying the outbound course, a track of 159 degrees. So it's time for the procedure turn. First, we start a left turn to 114 degrees. How will this course change affect the bearing? We're going to be pushing the bearing away, so it'll go down. We hold this course for about 90 seconds to compensate for the wind in our face here, then turn inbound to 294 to intercept the approach course. How will the 294 course we're flying push the bearing? It'll push it up towards 339 where we want it. When it gets there, we turn right and fly inbound. We'll remain on the 339 bearing by flying either above or below it to push it back to 339 if it deviates. Our goal is to have both the bearing and track match the desired 339. Now again, please don't you dare fly an instrument approach like this. Either do it the old-fashioned way with an ADF or load it into your IFR-approved GPS as an approach. We just wanted to experiment with the relationship between bearing and track and update an old concept from NDBs into the GPS age. Bearing can be a powerful tool to help you fly more precisely in the IFR environment. It can be difficult to know how you can affect your bearing by making heading and course changes, so play around with it in your sim or with an instructor to get a feel for it and how it can improve your situational awareness. As always, check out IFR Ground School and all of Flight Insight's training programs at the link here or in the description today.